Howdy howdy, this is Crouchy Grinding, back again with an arena cutoff video for Marvel Contest of Champions. Today I'm going to cover round 1 predictions for the new Nebula and Morningstar arenas. So the first thing I like to do is always kind of categorize these arenas compared to past arenas, as that allows me to really start the trend analysis. And when it comes to feature arenas, so far what we've seen since the 5-star arena has been introduced is kind of like 2 groups, 2 clusters if you will, of results, one for old champs and one for new champs. And of course with Nebula, she's an old champ. And then when it comes to the 4-star basic arena, kind of really seeing a grouping both low and mid interest, kind of at the lower end between 1.7, 1.6 all the way up to like 2.2. And then there's another group of cutoffs right around 3 million to about almost 4 million. I call those high interest, and I think in the case of Morningstar, she's going to fall somewhere in that 3 to 4 million kind of group. So again, with Nebula, I think she's an old champ. Obviously, she falls into the old group for the feature champs, and with Morningstar, I think she's going to be on in the high interest for the 4-star basic. So now that I've kind of categorized these, let's take a look at some past results. First, starting with the 4-star basic high interest, you can see that really I threw Kingpin in there, but that's really, I think again he's more into that other group versus the high interest, because high interest, as you can see here, with Mephisto at the low end at 3.3, with Medusa all the way to 3.83. I think somewhere around there is where you're going to see, in that range is where you're going to see Morningstar fall. And then based off of the trend analysis, of course. And then when we look at 4-star old feature results, you can see that for the most part, most of the old champs were running around between 5 million to 6 million. Then a big bump on Hyperion came, just because Hyperion, you know, I think that's more the exception than the rule, or just a gradual increase. I think that's just because Hyperion still is such a great champ. That you saw that big bump in the numbers, and I think you're going to see with Morningstar, while she's a good champ, she's not as good as Hyperion, so I think those numbers are going to fall back into the standard range. Now, one thing you will see here, I didn't bother to put the 3-star old feature trends, just because those numbers have been very consistent, right around 650 to 675,000, so it's very clear that those numbers are very consistent, so I'll just throw that directly into the prediction, which you'll see here shortly. And then when it comes to the 5-star feature old champs, you can see that there's been this gradual increase over time. I did throw out Hyperion because, again, similar to the 4-star feature, there was a big bump for the 5-star feature champ, and I think that's more than exception than rule, just because Hyperion's so good. And in this case, we're talking about a 5-star feature champ. Plus, not to mention, this was before Dungeons, etc., and I think that's going to play a very interesting role to see how this goes, because we've had some really low cutoffs for some decent new champs. Things have corrected a little bit with round 2 with Corvus, just because I think people either maybe are getting burnt out on Dungeons already or whatever, but I'm not exactly sure we're going to see the impact yet with the 5-star feature. So I definitely feel a pullback from that Hyperion cutoff, and something between Storm and Luke Cage, probably something very similar to Gambit. So that, and this is just based off of the trends that I'm seeing, etc. What I always like to do, especially for the first round, is get your input. So I always do that with the arena previews. I put together some polls, and here are the results of those polls. Let's start off first with a 4-star basic Morningstar cutoff. You can see that the majority of folks, 278 of you voted. Thank you very much for the folks that took time to vote. And you can see that 51% feel that she's going to fall in that 3 to 3.5. So very similar to kind of what I was talking before, based off the trends that we've seen. And based off, and a couple folks provided some input on why they voted that way. Let's start first with Riven, and you can see with his point was 2.5 to 3 million. He says with the dungeons going on and 4 stars getting less interested by the interest by the week, I don't think Morningstar will go for more than 2.8. So he's thinking she'll fall right out of that 3 million range where majority of you fell through. But I think he does bring up a good point that there's plenty going on, and 4 stars continue to lose their value. They still have value in the game, don't get me wrong, especially for progressing newer and progressing players. But you know, for people that have been playing the game for a while, they've moved on to 5 stars. And the Felix kind of, you know, expands on this a bit, especially when it comes to all the different content going on. And as you can see, Felix is newer to the game, did already get Morningstar. Can't wait to get her duped, but there's just grinding all the other content, perhaps mixed feelings about her style of play, and ramp up required, so she's not going to get to Medusa's number. So I think all these are good valid points, but he does point out he does want her just because of with the dupe you get the awakened ability to start with one soul and bleed on contact. So I think that's kind of a mixed message a little bit from Felix here, but I agree with kind of like, you know, you've got a lot of content going on, but he does call out the fact of how good she is dupe. So you could have a lot of people grinding for her just to get that dupe if they only have her. And lastly, you got Jay Lil here saying grinding being spread out between her and Nebula. But he did put the her cutoff at 3 to 3.5, but I think he points out again, like a number of other folks, that, you know, there's a lot of stuff grinding on there, so he doesn't think that she'll push past 3.5, which I think is a very good point. So thank you guys again for all those folks who voted and those who took time to provide some context. So let's now jump over to the 5-star feature, and 184 of you voted. Thanks again. And most of you think that Nebula is going to fall somewhere between 15 to 20%, or 15 to 20 million, or 20 to 25 million. And here's some reasons why. Kaiser, she's solid for AQ, and people are getting burnt out on dungeons. So this is a little opposing factor. You saw with the 4-star feature, folks thought, you know, there's plenty of other stuff going on in the game, including dungeons. But then Kaiser comes back and says, you know what, some people are already getting burnt out. And he would personally rather invest his time going for a short reward than a 10% chance out of those artifact crystals. So I think that's a good point. You're playing for crystals, no guarantee what you get. If you really want Nebula, you can guarantee get her going for here. So that's why he's on that even higher than where, you know, 72% feels like somewhere between 15 to 25 million. He's saying that he's part of that 12% that she's gonna fall even higher than that. But then Lieutenant Magna comes back with she's a solid sentinel counter. Good point, but it will be very hard to predict the outcome with an infinite dungeon. So I think this is a good point, but she is more useful than Corvus, but she is an older champ. So I think this, you know, we still have a bunch of other content. How will these lower cutoff scores kind of play over time? And I think Lieutenant Magnum plays on a good points on that, as he's kind of saying, hey, you know, it's really hard to kind of tell yet. Let's see. And I think 20 to 25 million is the right range, kind of think at this point, just based off of some of the unexpected lower results we've been having recently. And then lastly, you've got Joseph Chaney here saying she's a beast against the Sentinels, closer to 20 than 15, but dungeons will keep her under 20 million. So again, you got the opinion of somebody who thinks that because of all the other content going on, it's going to pull these numbers lower. And remember, we were already with Luke Cage like 27 million, etc. So I think it's going to be pulling closer to 20, but I do think it's going to be a little bit above that. So based off of the trend analysis and your input, thanks again for everybody who voted. Here are my thoughts for the Veterans Bracket first round cutoff. Starting first with a 5-star feature all the way on the left, I think she will be a little bit above 20 million, around 23 million, with a top 10% shard tier coming in at 10 million. We jump over to the 4-star feature. I think she's going to have that's going to be pulling back from Hyperion, go back to that 6 million range, with a top 10% at 4.2 million. Then we jump over to the 4-star basic with Morningstar having that high interest, but not, you know, right around that Mephisto, a tad bit higher than Mephisto at 3.4 million, with a cutoff with 11.25% shard tier coming at 1.5 million. And lastly, like I said, the 3-star feature for the Veterans Bracket has been very consistent, coming just above that last milestone of 640,000, with the actual cutoff at around 675,000, with 11.25% shard tier at 475. Again, these predictions, this is where I think the cutoffs will fall for the Veterans Bracket. I always like to give kind of like what I would recommend as a buffer to make sure if you really want these champs and make sure you get them, you might want to go to 26 million starting on the left to get that 5-star feature Nebula. You probably want to go to 8 million to make sure you get her as a 4-star, 3.7 to make 3.7 million to make sure you get Morningstar, and then for Nebula you want to get the 3-star. You go to 17 and you should get her for sure. And again, these are for the Veterans Bracket. When it comes to the beginner and intermediate, there's just not a ton of data out there to do any trend analysis again, so these are just some rough estimates based off of my own personal experience months ago, and based off of, you know, any anecdotal kind of results that I get from folks in the community from time to time. Just this past week, somebody provided some results, so I appreciate when people do take the time and put in the comments section and let me know what they actually get when they're part of the beginners or intermediate bracket. But again, it's even hard to base off of even recent results, just because these are very fluctuating brackets as people move between them all the time. So again, these are some very rough ranges. Keep that in mind. But anyway, starting with beginner bracket, if you really want to get the 3-star Nebula, go to 245,000. For Morningstar, the 4-star basic arena, go to 1.1, and the same number, 1.1, for Nebula and the 4-star feature. Jumping down the intermediate bracket, if you want the 3-star Nebula, go to 550,000. If you want the 4-star basic Morningstar, go to 800,000. And if you want the 4-star feature Nebula, go to 1.2 million. And just like the veteran brackets information, these numbers are just where my thoughts on where I think these things are going to land. Would really love to hear your thoughts. So down in the comment section, if you have any questions, start on down there. We can definitely discuss them there too. And if you feel differently about these numbers, if you think we're going to see something really lower just because of these goofy numbers we've been seeing late, or if you think they're going to even be higher, would love to discuss that in the comment section too. Throw them down there, and we'll do it. Other than that, thanks a lot for stopping by. If you like this video, I would really appreciate you clicking that thumbs up button. And if you like this and other videos I have on the channel, we really appreciate it. Subscribe. Thanks again, and have a great day.